September 1839, Pearl River Delta, China. British warships aim their cannons at Chinese fortifications. Imperial Chinese troops stand on the walls, watching helplessly as foreign vessels blockade their ports. This isn't a war over territory. This isn't a war over religion. This is a war over drugs. The British Empire, the most powerful nation on earth, is about to force China to buy opium at gunpoint. Welcome to the First Opium War, the moment when the modern drug trade was born. But before we talk about empires and battles, let me tell you about one person. Canton, 1838. A mother walks through the narrow streets of the old city, searching. She's looking for her son, a brilliant scholar who was preparing for the imperial examinations. He'd studied for years. His future was bright. But 6 months ago, he discovered opium. At first, it was just an experiment, something the wealthy merchants did in tea houses, mixing the drug with tobacco, smoking it from elegant pipes. They called it leisure and culture, a sign of refinement, a way to relax after a hard day's work. Then he couldn't stop. His hands began to shake. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He sold his books to buy more opium, then his clothes. Then he started stealing from the family. His mother watched him waste away, skin hanging from his bones, eyes hollow, barely conscious. When there was nothing left to sell, he locked himself in his room. She could hear him groaning through the door, suffering through withdrawal, shaking, vomiting, crying. But he always went back to the drug. She wasn't alone. By 1838, there were millions of Chinese opium addicts. Soldiers were addicted. Government officials were addicted. Entire villages were addicted. People who stopped using opium suffered chills, nausea, violent cramps. Some died from withdrawal. Once hooked, they would do anything to get more. This woman did what thousands of other mothers, fathers, wives, and children did. She wrote a letter to the emperor, begging him to stop the British, to stop the opium, to save her son. The emperor sent a man named Lin Zexu to answer those letters, and Lin was about to start a war. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. Opium, the dried latex of the poppy flower, has been used since ancient times. Mesopotamian clay tablets from 3400 BC call it the joy plant. Egyptians used it in medicine. Romans gave it to crying babies. For centuries, opium was just another herbal remedy. Powerful, yes, but controlled. Then came the British East India Company. By the 1700s, Britain had a problem. The British loved Chinese tea. They loved Chinese silk. They loved Chinese porcelain. But China didn't want anything Britain made. No woolens, no manufactured goods, nothing. The Chinese emperor would only accept payment in silver. So silver flowed out of Britain and into China. Millions of pounds every year. The trade deficit was crippling. The British needed something China would buy, something addictive, something that would reverse the flow of silver. They found it in India, opium. The East India Company, essentially a private corporation with its own army, controlled vast territories in India. They expanded opium farms into industrial-scale plantations, hundreds of thousands of acres, tens of thousands of Indian farmers forced to grow poppies instead of food. The company controlled everything. You couldn't grow poppies without their permission. You couldn't refine opium without a license. All opium had to be sold to the company at a fixed price. Then the company auctioned it off in Calcutta at 10 times the cost. The profit margins were staggering. But here's the clever part. The East India Company didn't smuggle the opium into China themselves. That would be too obvious. Instead, they sold it to country traders, private merchants licensed by the company to carry goods from India to China. These traders sold the opium to Chinese smugglers along the coast. The smugglers paid in silver. The traders gave the silver to the East India Company, and the company used that silver to buy tea, silk, and porcelain. It was the perfect laundering scheme. The British government got Chinese goods. The company made enormous profits, and no one officially touched the opium, except for the millions of Chinese people who became addicted. The numbers are staggering. In 1729, China imported about 200 chests of opium per year. By 1767, it was 1,000 chests. By 1820, it had exploded to 10,000 chests annually. Each chest weighed about 140 pounds, 63 kilograms of pure opium. By 1838, China was importing 40,000 chests per year. That's 5.6 million pounds of opium flooding into the country every 12 months. Opium became leisurely, urban, cultured, and a status symbol, wrote one historian, an evidence of wealth, leisure, and refinement. But for the addicts, it was hell. One account describes it. His hands would start to shake so he could not even have a drink without spilling it. At the full-blown cold turkey stage, he would lock himself in his room and push the key out from under the door. We could hear his desperate groaning from within, but knew there was nothing we could do to help. Silver started flowing out of China and into Britain. The British had won the economic war, but the Chinese emperor wasn't going to let it continue. March 1839, Canton. Emperor Daoguang sends Lin Zexu, a scholar official known for his integrity and nicknamed Lin as clear as the heavens. Lin arrives and reads the letters, thousands of them, mothers begging him to save their sons, fathers describing their daughters selling themselves for opium, officials reporting entire villages rendered listless, incapable workers. Lin writes back to the emperor, "A murder of one person is subject to the death sentence. Just imagine how many people opium has killed." He's furious, and he's not negotiating. Lin immediately surrounds the foreign trading quarters. He demands that all British merchants hand over their opium. No compensation, no negotiation. Surrender the drugs or face execution. The British refuse. Lin doesn't blink. He locks down the entire foreign settlement, 1,350 foreigners trapped inside, forbidden to leave. No food deliveries, no water, guards everywhere. The message is clear: hand over the opium or starve. The British cave. Over the next few weeks, they surrender 20,783 chests of opium, 2.6 million pounds of the drug. Then Lin does something extraordinary. He doesn't just burn it, he makes it a ceremony. For 23 days, 500 workers mix the opium with lime and salt, then dump it into the sea. Lin stands on the shore and composes an elegy, an apology to the gods of the sea for polluting their realm. He also writes a letter to Queen Victoria. In the letter, Lin appeals to her morality. He writes, "Suppose there were people from another country who carried opium for sale to England and seduced your people into buying and smoking it. Certainly you would deeply hate it and be bitterly aroused." He points out that opium smoking is a crime in England, so why does her government promote its use in China? He pleads, "The wealth of China is used to profit the barbarians. Heaven is furious with anger, and all the gods are moaning with pain." The letter never reaches her. Sources suggest it was lost in transit, but it was later reprinted in the London Times as a direct appeal to the British public. It didn't matter. The British government had already decided. The British are enraged, not because their drugs were destroyed. They knew they were smuggling illegal narcotics. They're enraged because they weren't compensated. They argue that opium is British property and China has no right to seize it without payment. In October 1839, Foreign Secretary Lord Palmerston sends a fleet of warships to China. The message to Beijing: pay us for the opium you destroyed, open more ports to trade, and stop interfering with our merchants. Or else. The Chinese refuse. On November 3, 1839, 2 British warships destroyed 29 Chinese war junks in less than an hour. It's not even a fight. British naval technology is decades ahead. The First Opium War has begun. For the next 3 years, Britain methodically crushes China. British steamships sail up Chinese rivers, shelling forts, blockading ports, and occupying coastal cities. In August 1842, British forces capture Nanjing. The Qing dynasty has no choice. On August 29, 1842, Chinese officials sign the Treaty of Nanjing. China is forced to pay Britain 21 million silver dollars, open 5 ports to British trade, cede Hong Kong to Britain in perpetuity, grant British citizens immunity from Chinese law. And here's the cruelest part: opium isn't even mentioned in the treaty. It remains technically illegal in China, but the British keep smuggling it in anyway. And now, with 5 ports open and British merchants protected, it's easier than ever. China just fought a war to stop drug trafficking and lost. Remember that mother from Canton, the one looking for her son? We don't know what happened to him, but we know what happened to millions like him. The opium trade didn't stop. It got worse. Chinese historians call this period the century of humiliation, and it all started with a drug. But the story doesn't end here. because while Britain was forcing opium on China, Western pharmaceutical companies were busy in their laboratories, experimenting with the poppy plant, trying to create something even more powerful. In 1898, a German company named Bayer succeeded. They synthesized a new drug, derived from morphine but far stronger. They tested it on factory workers and claimed it was safe, non-addictive, and perfect for treating coughs. They called it heroin, and they were about to make the Opium Wars look like a preview. August 21, 1897, Elberfeld, Germany. A 29-year-old chemist named Felix Hoffmann walks into the Bayer Company laboratory carrying two things: his father's medical records and a notebook filled with experiments from a dead French chemist. His father is dying. Rheumatoid arthritis, constant pain. The only treatment available is sodium salicylate, a plant extract that reduces inflammation but destroys the stomach lining. His father can barely eat. The pain medication is killing him as surely as the disease. Hoffmann is desperate to help, so he starts experimenting. 11 days later, on August 10, 1897, he succeeds. He creates a new form of acetyl salicylic acid, stable, effective, and far gentler on the stomach. Bayer tests it on animals, then on human patients at Deaconess Hospital in Halle. It works. They name it aspirin. But Hoffmann doesn't stop there. Just 11 days after inventing aspirin, he synthesizes another drug. This one is based on morphine, the painkiller extracted from opium poppies. Hoffmann modifies the chemical structure, creating something new, something stronger. He tests it. The results are extraordinary. It's more powerful than morphine, it works faster, and initial tests suggest it has fewer side effects. Bayer's head of pharmacology, Heinrich Draeser, is ecstatic. He names the drug after the German word heroisch, heroic, powerful. They call it heroin, and in 1898, Bayer starts selling it to the world. The marketing campaign is aggressive. Bayer produces glossy advertisements showing heroin bottles with colorful labels positioned right next to aspirin. The message is clear. Both are safe, effective medicines from a trusted company. Heroin is marketed for everything: coughs, bronchitis, asthma, tuberculosis, chest pain, even insomnia. Doctors prescribe it to children. Mothers give it to crying babies. It's sold over the counter in pharmacies across America and Europe. Bayer goes further. They claim heroin is a cure for morphine addiction. Think about that. A drug derived from the same opium poppy as morphine, marketed as a way to get people off morphine. The St. James Society, a philanthropic organization, launches a campaign to mail free samples of heroin to morphine addicts across America. Thousands of people receive unsolicited heroin in the mail, with instructions to use it to quit morphine. It's one of the most catastrophic public health decisions in history. But at first, the medical community loves it. In 1898, Dr. Strube at the Medical University Clinic of Berlin tests heroin on 50 patients with tuberculosis. He reports that it's effective in relieving their cough and in producing sleep. He observes no adverse effects, though he cautiously notes that further observations were necessary to determine whether continual use might be harmful or lead to chronic heroinism. That warning is ignored. Dr. Flore, working at Bayer's own clinic, tests heroin on patients with bronchitis and asthma. He finds it valuable and unusually prompt and dependable, where codeine had failed. In September 1898, Heinrich Draeser presents heroin at the Congress of German Naturalists and Physicians. He makes a stunning claim. Heroin is 10 times as effective as codeine in treating respiratory diseases, with only 1/10 of the toxic effects. The audience erupts in applause. Heroin is hailed as a miracle drug. By 1899, Bayer is producing 1 ton of heroin per year, exporting it to 23 countries. The American Medical Association approves its use in 1906 and 1907. It's sold in beautiful amber glass bottles with elegant labels. It looks safe. It looks scientific. It looks like medicine. It's not. Within a few years, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Patients who use heroin for coughs don't want to stop when the cough is gone. They come back to their doctors demanding more. They claim they still have symptoms, even when they clearly don't. Doctors start noticing a pattern. Patients who use heroin regularly need higher doses to feel the same effect. If they try to stop, they suffer violent withdrawal, shaking, sweating, vomiting, muscle cramps, unbearable pain. Some describe it as feeling like their bones are breaking from the inside. And it's happening everywhere. Factory workers, housewives, children, people from all walks of life, all becoming dependent on a drug their doctor told them was safe. By the early 1900s, physicians begin warning against the potential for tolerance and addiction, but it's too late. Tens of thousands of people are already hooked. Let me tell you about one of them. His name was never recorded, but his story was. He lived in New York City in the early 1900s, one of thousands of heroin addicts in the northern industrial slums. He'd started using heroin as a cough suppressant prescribed by his doctor. A few spoonfuls, nothing dangerous, just medicine. 6 months later, he couldn't function without it. He tried to quit. The withdrawal was unbearable. He locked himself in his apartment, determined to suffer through it. His landlady later described hearing him through the door, groaning, crying, begging for help. She said it sounded like he was dying. He broke. He went back to the drug. This became his life. Every dollar he earned went to heroin. When he ran out of money, he sold his belongings. When he had nothing left to sell, he started stealing. His friends abandoned him. His family stopped visiting. He lived in filthy rooms with other addicts, surrounded by animal feces and people overdosing in the corners. Addiction is weird, one modern addict said, describing a nearly identical experience. During that time, I lost it all, and it really didn't matter to me. As long as I could get high, it was okay. That's what heroin does. It doesn't just take your health, it takes your humanity. By 1910, the evidence is overwhelming. Heroin is not safe. It's not a cure for morphine addiction. It's 4 times more addictive than morphine. Bayer quietly stops producing it in 1913. They erase it from their company history. They focus on aspirin, their other invention from that same laboratory, the same chemist, the same year. Aspirin becomes one of the most successful drugs in history still sold today. Heroin becomes one of the most destructive. In 1914, the U.S. government passes the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act, restricting heroin use. By 1924, heroin is banned entirely in America. Possession becomes a federal crime, but the damage is done. Heroin addiction spreads through American cities like a plague. It becomes integrated into the jazz scene of the 1930s and 40s, the beatnik subculture of the 1950s, the counterculture of the 1960s. Heroin stops being medicine and becomes the symbol of everything dark and dangerous about drug addiction. And yet, somehow, the cycle repeats. Because here's the thing, Bayer didn't invent addiction. They just industrialized it. They took a natural product, opium, and turned it into something synthetic, more powerful, more profitable. And they weren't the last to do it. While America was banning heroin, other forces were already at work. Governments, intelligence agencies, criminal empires, all discovering that controlling the drug trade wasn't just profitable, it was power. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, a new opium empire was rising, and this time it wasn't a company running the operation, it was the CIA. Longcheng, Laos. A secret CIA base hidden in the mountains of northern Laos. No American official will admit this place exists. It's not on any map, but by 1971, it's one of the busiest airports in the world. Every day, planes arrive and depart. They bring weapons. They bring cash. They bring supplies for a secret war that the American public knows nothing about. These planes belong to Air America, officially a civilian airline, unofficially a CIA front company. And some of those planes, they're also carrying something else, opium. Welcome to the Golden Triangle, the region where the borders of Burma, Thailand, and Laos meet, and where, during the Vietnam War, the CIA helped create the largest heroin-producing region in the world. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented history. Let's go back to 1959. The Cold War is escalating. The United States is terrified of communism spreading through Southeast Asia. China has fallen to Mao. North Vietnam is backed by the Soviets. Laos, a small landlocked country most Americans can't even find on a map, is at risk of falling next. The CIA decides to fight back. But there's a problem. Congress won't approve a full-scale war in Laos. So the CIA launches a covert operation, a secret war hidden from the American public and even from most of the US government. They need soldiers. They find them in the mountains. The Hmong people, an ethnic minority who've lived in the highlands of Laos for centuries. The CIA recruits a Hmong general named Vang Pao. Vang Pao is ambitious, ruthless, and willing to work with the Americans. The CIA arms him, trains him, funds him, and gives him command of a 30,000-man guerrilla army. Their mission? Attack North Vietnamese supply lines, disrupt communist forces, fight a shadow war that officially doesn't exist. But Vang Pao has another source of income, one the CIA chooses to ignore: opium. The Hmong have grown opium poppies for generations. It's part of their economy, their culture, their survival. In the remote mountains of Laos, there are no roads, no banks, no infrastructure. Opium is currency, it's medicine, it's trade. For Vang Pao, it's also funding. Here's how it works. Hmong farmers harvest raw opium from poppies. They sell it to Vang Pao's network of middlemen. The opium is then flown to heroin labs, some located just blocks away from CIA headquarters at Longcheng. These labs process the raw opium into number 4 heroin, the purest, most potent form of the drug. Then it's loaded onto planes, Vang Pao's private planes, 2 C-47 aircraft given to him by the CIA. The heroin flies to Vientiane, the capital of Laos. From there, it's smuggled to Thailand, Singapore, and eventually to the United States. The profits fund Vang Pao's army, pay his soldiers, and keep the secret war running. And the CIA? They know. They've always known. In 1968, Rolling Stone magazine publishes an investigation documenting CIA involvement in the Laotian opium trade. In 1972, historian Alfred McCoy releases a bombshell book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia. He interviews CIA operatives, pilots, and drug traffickers. His conclusion: in most cases, the CIA's role involved various forms of complicity, tolerance, or studied ignorance about the trade, not any direct culpability in the actual trafficking. The CIA did not handle heroin, but it did provide its drug lord allies with transport, arms, and political protection. Let me translate that. The CIA didn't traffic drugs themselves, but they gave drug traffickers planes, weapons, and immunity from prosecution. They turned a blind eye. They protected their allies. And when the heroin started flooding American streets, killing American soldiers, destroying American communities, they stayed silent, because stopping the drugs would mean losing the war. Let me tell you about one man who tried to stop it. His name was Tony Poe. Full name: Anthony Poshepny. Former Marine, CIA paramilitary officer, one of the most decorated operatives in the agency's history. He worked in Laos during the Secret War, training Hmong soldiers, running covert operations. And he watched, horrified, as Vang Pao's opium empire grew. Tony Poe later testified that Air America planes were being used to transport opium and heroin. He said it openly. He didn't care about the consequences. He'd seen the drugs. He'd seen the labs. He'd seen CIA-supplied planes flying heroin out of Longcheng. Former Air America pilots confirmed his story. Some admitted they'd unknowingly flown opium shipments. Others said they'd been ordered to look the other way. One investigative report from 1988 stated it plainly. Vang Pao used the CIA airline Air America to send narcotics to a CIA-run base in Laos and on to other distribution points in Asia. Opium was a primary source of funding for the Laotian army, but the CIA denied everything. They still do. Here's where it gets personal. By the early 1970s, heroin from the Golden Triangle is flooding into the United States. American soldiers in Vietnam are getting addicted at shocking rates. Heroin use among U.S. troops becomes so widespread that the military launches emergency investigations. Back home, American cities are drowning in the drug. Harlem, the Bronx, Detroit, Chicago. Heroin epidemics devastate Black and Latino communities. Crime skyrockets, overdoses multiply, and the source, the Golden Triangle, the same region where the CIA is running covert operations, the same labs operating under CIA protection. In 1971, 2 agents from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, the predecessor of the DEA, try to seize an Air America aircraft suspected of carrying heroin. The CIA intervenes. The plane is released. The agents are told to back off. Why? Because exposing the drug trade would expose the secret war. And the secret war is more important than a few thousand American addicts. That's the calculation. That's the choice the CIA made. By the mid-1970s, the Golden Triangle is producing 70% of the world's heroin supply. Labs in the region churn out thousands of kilograms every year. Thai, Laotian, and Burmese drug lords, backed by CIA-trained armies, control the trade. Key figures include Kun Sa, the Opium King, who commands a 20,000-man private army and produces up to 600 tons of heroin annually. Lo Sing Han, a Burmese warlord who builds heroin refineries and smuggling networks across Southeast Asia. And of course, Vang Pao, the CIA's partner, whose heroin operation funds the secret war in Laos. These aren't small-time criminals. They're state-level actors, protected by governments, backed by intelligence agencies, operating with near-total impunity. And the CIA? They're not just complicit, they're essential to the operation. Without CIA planes, CIA protection, and CIA funding, the Golden Triangle heroin trade could never have reached this scale. The secret war in Laos ends in 1975 when communist forces take control. Vang Pao flees to the United States, where he lives as a celebrated war hero among the Hmong refugee community. He's never prosecuted, he's never investigated. He dies in 2011 a free man. Air America officially shuts down in 1976. The CIA distances itself from the whole operation. Documents are classified. Testimonies are buried. But the damage is done. The Golden Triangle remains the world's heroin capital for decades. The infrastructure, labs, trafficking routes, warlord armies stays in place long after the Americans leave, and the heroin keeps flowing. Here's the thing. This isn't ancient history, this is a blueprint, because in the 1980s the CIA will do it again, this time in Central America, with cocaine instead of heroin. The same playbook, the same excuses, the same devastation. But before we get there, we need to talk about what was happening back home in America. Because while the CIA was trafficking heroin in Southeast Asia, a new drug crisis was erupting in American cities. It was called crack cocaine, and it would destroy a generation. Miami Beach, a nightclub called Cebu. Inside, wealthy lawyers, cocaine dealers, and celebrities are celebrating. Cocaine was the drug of choice for the elite. Pure, expensive, prestigious. A single gram could cost $300. Only the rich could afford the habit. But the Medellin cartel has a problem. By the early 1980s, the cartel, led by Pablo Escobar, is producing millions of kilograms of cocaine annually. They're making billions. But there's only so much cocaine the wealthy can consume. The market is saturated, the profits are plateauing, so they need a new market, a new customer base, someone cheaper, someone more desperate, someone more vulnerable. They need to make cocaine affordable. And they did. They created crack. Crack is cocaine treated with baking soda and water, then heated until it turns into crystals. Chemically, it's the same drug, but it's cheaper, costing just $5 to $20 per dose instead of $300 per gram. And it's faster. When smoked, it hits the brain in seconds instead of minutes. Most importantly, it's more addictive. The first documented crack seizure was in 1983 in Miami. Within a year, it's in New York. Within 2 years, it's in Los Angeles. By 1985, crack cocaine is available in virtually every major American city, and it's devastating black communities. Let me be specific about what happened next, because this isn't just a drug story. It's a story about targeted destruction. Between 1984 and 1989, the peak years of the crack epidemic, the homicide rate for black males aged 14 to 17 more than doubled. For black males aged 18 to 24, the murder rate increased almost as much. Think about that. Not a small increase. A doubling of youth murders in just 5 years. During the same period, the black community experienced a 200% increase in fetal death rates, a surge in low birth weight babies, weapons arrests skyrocketing, the number of children placed in foster care soaring, entire families were destroyed, mothers addicted, children orphaned, babies born with crack in their systems, their brains damaged before they took their first breath. And why did crack hit black communities hardest? Because crack dealers needed somewhere to sell. The poorest neighborhoods, the ones nobody else wanted, became battlegrounds. As a result of the low skill levels and minimal initial resource outlay required to sell crack, systemic violence flourished. One study noted, translation, a teenager could become a dealer with almost no startup capital. A corner could generate thousands per day. And when rival dealers fought over territory, the violence was brutal. Young black men became the faces of the crack epidemic. They were the dealers. They were the users. They were the ones arrested, convicted, and incarcerated, and the media loved the story. But here's where the media story diverged from reality. When cocaine was used by wealthy whites, the powder form snorted in nightclubs, it was portrayed as a vice, a recreational drug. A problem, sure, but a personal problem. When crack exploded in black communities, the media framed it as an epidemic, a plague, a moral catastrophe. The sentence lengths reflected this bias. Federal courts handed out massive sentences for crack possession, sentences 18 times longer than for powder cocaine possession, despite both being the same drug, chemically. A black man caught with 5 grams of crack received a mandatory 5-year federal sentence. A white man would need to possess 500 grams of powder cocaine to receive the same sentence. It was systemic racism written into law. Now, here's where it connects back to everything we've been talking about. Some researchers, most notably journalist Gary Webb, alleged that the crack epidemic wasn't just a market phenomenon. They alleged it was facilitated. Webb's investigation documented that during the 1980s Nicaraguan Civil War, the CIA was backing the Contras, a rebel group fighting the Sandinista government. The problem? Congress wouldn't fund the Contras directly, so the CIA needed another source of money. The Contras turned to cocaine trafficking. They partnered with Colombian drug organizations to smuggle cocaine into the United States. The CIA, Webb alleged, looked the other way, and in some cases, actively protected the supply networks. The money funded the Contras war. The cocaine? It flooded into American cities, particularly black neighborhoods, and became crack. Webb's allegations were controversial. Major newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, initially rejected his reporting. But a 1996 CIA internal report later admitted that the agency was aware of Contra involvement in drug trafficking and, in some cases, dissuaded the DEA from investigating the Contra supply networks. In other words, the CIA knew, and they let it happen. The official conclusion was that there was no conspiracy to bring drugs into the United States. But the facts were undeniable. The CIA protected cocaine traffickers. The cocaine reached American streets. Crack devastated black communities. And nobody at the CIA was ever held accountable. Sound familiar? In Southeast Asia, the CIA protected opium traffickers. American communities, soldiers, and urban poor were flooded with heroin. The CIA claimed they had nothing to do with the trafficking itself. In Central America, the CIA protected cocaine traffickers. Black communities were flooded with crack. The CIA again claimed they had nothing to do with the actual trafficking. Same pattern, same excuse, same devastation. Here's what's critical to understand. The crack epidemic wasn't just a drug crisis. It was a social construction shaped by geopolitics, by law enforcement priorities, by media bias, and yes, by CIA policy decisions. When the government finally cracked down on crack dealers in the late 1980s, they used militaristic language, war on drugs, soldiers in the streets, SWAT teams, mandatory minimums, mass incarceration. The result? By 2000, 15 years after crack's arrival, the murder rate for young black males was still 70% higher than pre-epidemic levels. The study estimated that 8% of all murders in 2000 were a direct result of the crack epidemic's long-term effects. That's a legacy. That's a scar. That's decades of trauma, prison time, lost lives. By the 1990s, crack was finally fading as a dominant force, but it had destroyed communities. It had destabilized entire neighborhoods. It had filled prisons with young black men serving sentences that were disproportionate, unjust, and often unconstitutional. And what did the government do? Nothing. No apology, no reparations, no accountability. Instead, they moved on. They found new markets, new drugs, new ways to profit from addiction. Because here's the thing, the Medellin cartel eventually collapsed. Pablo Escobar was killed in 1993. The crack epidemic receded. But the system that allowed the CIA to partner with traffickers, that allowed disproportionate sentencing, that allowed entire communities to be sacrificed for geopolitical goals, that system remained. And in the 1990s, pharmaceutical companies were about to use that same system to create an even bigger crisis. They had a new drug, a synthetic opioid. They claimed it was safe, non-addictive, revolutionary. They called it OxyContin. and it was going to kill more Americans than any epidemic before it. December 1995, Radnor, Pennsylvania, Purdue Pharma headquarters. A meeting room filled with pharmaceutical executives. They're about to launch a new product, a time-release painkiller called OxyContin. Oxycodone, the active ingredient, is an old drug. It's been around since 1917. Doctors have known for decades that it's highly addictive, but OxyContin's marketing team sees an opportunity. At the time, most Americans with chronic pain suffer in silence. Doctors are taught to be conservative with opioids, prescribe small doses for short durations, only as a last resort. Pharmaceutical companies know this, and they know it's limiting their market. So Purdue Pharma makes a bold claim. OxyContin is safe for chronic pain because it's time release. The drug dissolves slowly into the bloodstream over 12 hours, they argue. This prevents the rush. This prevents addiction. It's a lie. In truth, oxycodone is oxycodone, whether it's in powder form, instant-release tablets, or time-release pills. The drug itself is equally addictive, but the marketing message is seductive. Doctors want to believe it. They want to help their patients with pain. So Purdue Pharma launches the most aggressive pharmaceutical marketing campaign in American history. First, they identify high-prescribing doctors who already prescribe lots of opioids. They code them Region 0, marking them as priority targets. Then Purdue sends sales representatives to visit these doctors, training them on how to overcome their hesitation about high-dose opioids. The sales reps are equipped with research papers that downplay addiction risks, many funded by Purdue itself, patient vignettes, fictional stories of pain, patients whose lives improved on high-dose OxyContin marketing materials designed to humanize the brand tactics to convince doctors to increase patient doses without regard for addiction risk. One fictional patient called James is described as needing just a dose increase from 10 mg to 20 mg over 3 weeks. The marketing materials trained sales reps to use James as a template, getting doctors to rapidly escalate doses in real patients. Purdue also funds medical conferences, funds pain management research, gives grants to patient advocacy groups, all with the message that opioids are safe, opioids are necessary, and doctors shouldn't be afraid to prescribe high doses. By 2000, OxyContin sales are exploding. Let me tell you what happens next. Appalachia. A single mother named Jennifer works at a coal mine. Her job is brutal, digging, lifting, destroying her back. At 42 years old, she's in constant pain. Her doctor prescribes OxyContin. It's safe, he tells her. Time release, non-addictive. She takes 40 mg per day, then 60 mg, then 80 mg. Her doctor keeps increasing the dose. Purdue's sales reps have trained him that higher doses guard better pain control. 6 months in, Jennifer realizes she can't function without the pills. When she tries to reduce the dose, withdrawal kicks in. Sweating, shaking, unbearable pain. She's trapped. She's not alone. By 2000, hundreds of thousands of Americans prescribed OxyContin are developing addiction. And unlike the crack epidemic, which happened in poor urban neighborhoods and received intense law enforcement attention, this happens in white suburban and rural America. And it's treated as a medical problem, not a criminal one. By 2001, OxyContin is responsible for more overdose deaths than heroin. By 2010, it's the most abused pharmaceutical drug in America. Meanwhile, the Sackler family is raking in billions. Purdue Pharma made approximately $35 billion in revenue from OxyContin sales. The Sacklers, the family that owns Purdue, pocket a significant share. But here's where it gets dark. In 2008, as evidence of the addiction epidemic becomes impossible to ignore, Raymond Sackler, one of the family's leaders, tells Purdue executives to measure our performance by RXs by strength, giving higher measures to higher strengths. Translation: the company's success is measured by how many high-dose prescriptions they generate, not by patient health outcomes, not by addiction prevention, by selling more high-strength OxyContin. Between 2008 and 2018, even as they face thousands of lawsuits and mounting evidence of the epidemic, the Sackler family withdraws almost $11 billion from Purdue Pharma and places it in family trusts and holding companies. They're moving money out while hiding from liability. They're taking profits from addiction while preparing to escape accountability. The death toll is staggering. By 2016, 1 in 65 deaths in America is opioid-related. Think about that. Not 1 in a million. 1 in 65. For young adults aged 25-34, it's even worse. 1 in 5 deaths is opioid-related. This is a generation being erased. A study published in 2022 calculated that OxyContin's introduction accounts for 79% of the rise in overdose death rates since 1996. If OxyContin had never existed, we wouldn't have an opioid crisis. We'd have normal overdose rates. Hundreds of thousands dead, millions addicted, entire communities devastated. In 2007, Purdue Pharma pleaded guilty to criminal misbranding charges. They agreed to pay $600 million in fines. But here's the key detail. No executives went to prison. Compare that to the crack epidemic. Black men were sentenced to decades for simple possession. Now, white pharmaceutical executives, who literally created an addiction epidemic that killed more people, face fines but no prison. It's Bayer all over again. Different era, different drug, same pattern. In 2019, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy. The company dissolved. But the Sacklers, they negotiated a deal, pay several $billion in fines, and in return, they get immunity from future lawsuits. Even in bankruptcy, they're protected. In 2024, the Supreme Court overturned that deal, ruling that it had no authority to give billionaires immunity from opioid victims' lawsuits. But by then, the Sacklers had already moved most of their assets out of reach. They'll face more legal battles, but they'll likely never face serious prison time. They'll never be forced to pay what they actually owe. They'll never face consequences commensurate with their crimes. Meanwhile, Jennifer, the coal miner from Appalachia, is still struggling with addiction. Her kids grew up watching her nod off, watching her lose jobs, watching her suffer. She's one of millions. And here's the most tragic part. The opioid epidemic didn't end with OxyContin. It evolved. When doctors finally stopped prescribing OxyContin, addicts didn't stop using opioids. They switched to heroin, cheaper and more available. Then they switched to fentanyl, synthetic opioid created in laboratories, 100 times more potent than morphine. Fentanyl is so powerful that 2 milligrams, the size of a few grains of salt, can be lethal. And because fentanyl is produced in clandestine labs, the purity is inconsistent. Users never know what dose they're taking. It's Russian roulette with every injection. Since 2013, fentanyl deaths have soared. Today, fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18-45. The cascade started with OxyContin, Purdue Pharma, the Sackler family. October 2023, a high school in Portland, Oregon. A student named Marcus, 17 years old, straight-A student, varsity athlete, is found dead in the school bathroom. The cause? Fentanyl overdose. According to his friends, he'd taken what he thought was Xanax, an anti-anxiety medication, but it wasn't. It was pressed fentanyl, synthetic opioid pills manufactured in illegal labs, designed to look exactly like prescription pills. One dose killed him. Marcus is one of thousands. In 2023, fentanyl killed more Americans than any other drug. It's now the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18-45. Not car accidents, not suicide, not cancer, fentanyl. Let me repeat that. For the most productive years of American life, the #1 killer is a drug. Fentanyl was created in 1959 by a Belgian chemist named Paul Janssen. It was designed for a specific purpose: cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. These patients experience unbearable pain. Morphine doesn't always help, but fentanyl, 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, does. It's a medical miracle for the right patients. For the wrong hands, it's a weapon of mass destruction. In legitimate medical use, fentanyl comes in patches, lozenges, or precisely measured doses, never more than what's medically necessary. Doctors carefully monitor patients. It's kept under strict lock and key. But on the illegal market, fentanyl is anarchy. Here's the critical difference. Heroin comes from opium poppies, a plant that needs to be grown, harvested, and processed. It takes months. It requires land. It requires manpower. Fentanyl, it's 100% synthetic, made entirely in a laboratory using chemicals. A chemist can produce kilograms of fentanyl in a basement. The precursor chemicals come primarily from China. And here's the terrifying part. Even 2 milligrams, the weight of a few grains of salt, can be fatal. Think about the logistics. A kilogram of fentanyl contains 500,000 doses. One lab can produce massive quantities. One dose from that kilogram can kill. The margin for error is 0. Compare that to other drugs. You can snort cocaine multiple times in a session and survive. You can smoke marijuana. You can drink alcohol and get drunk without dying. But fentanyl, there is no safe recreational dose. Every time someone uses it, they're playing Russian roulette. In the early 2000s, fentanyl was a specialty drug used mainly by cancer patients and severe trauma patients. But as the opioid crisis deepened, as more people became addicted to OxyContin and then heroin, drug traffickers discovered something. Fentanyl could be mixed into heroin. A tiny amount of fentanyl makes heroin seem more potent. Users think they're getting stronger heroin. They adjust their dose accordingly. But they don't realize fentanyl is 50-100 times more powerful. One injection, and they're dead. By 2013, fentanyl deaths start appearing. By 2015, they're skyrocketing. By 2020, fentanyl is involved in more than 60% of all overdose deaths. Today, 7 out of 10 overdose deaths involve fentanyl. Let me describe what a fentanyl overdose looks like. The user injects. Within seconds, the drug hits the brain. Respiratory depression begins immediately. The brain stops telling the lungs to breathe. The body starts turning blue. First the lips, then the fingers, then the entire body. If someone's watching, they might recognize the signs. They might call 911. They might administer naloxone, a drug that reverses opioid overdose by blocking fentanyl's effects on the brain. But here's the problem. Fentanyl is so potent that a standard dose of naloxone might not be enough. You need multiple doses, sometimes multiple doses in rapid succession. And if no one's around, if the person is using alone in an apartment or a park or a car, they have maybe 3 or 5 minutes before brain damage becomes permanent, maybe 10 before death becomes irreversible. Many don't get that chance. The statistics are apocalyptic. In 2023, 105,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. That's more than 280 deaths per day, more than 1 death every 5 minutes. To put that in perspective, the United States lost 58 20 soldiers in the Vietnam War over 20 years. Fentanyl is killing more Americans every single year than that war did in 2 decades. In some states, the crisis is even worse. West Virginia has 69.2 fentanyl deaths per 100,000 people, the highest rate in the nation. Delaware is second with 44.6 per 100,000. These are rates reminiscent of wartime casualty statistics. For young people aged 15-24, 4 out of 5 overdose deaths involve fentanyl. It's the leading cause of death for this age group, more than suicide, more than car accidents, more than homicides. This is a generational extinction. And who's manufacturing this stuff? China. Chinese pharmaceutical and chemical companies produce the precursor chemicals needed to synthesize fentanyl. Some of these chemicals have legitimate uses. They're used in pharmaceuticals, in industrial processes, but many Chinese manufacturers know exactly what they're being used for. According to BBC investigations, Chinese chemical companies have been caught providing instructions on how to synthesize fentanyl from their products, communicating via encrypted channels, accepting payment in cryptocurrency. The Chinese government, they claim strict drug laws, but their tax rebates and subsidies have actively encouraged domestic fentanyl production. In 2019, China nominally listed fentanyl as a controlled substance, but they only controlled a handful of precursor chemicals out of hundreds produced and exported. It's theater, compliance without commitment. China gets credit for cracking down while the flow continues. Let me tell you about another victim. Sarah was 19, college student, volleyball player from a middle-class family in Colorado. She wasn't what you'd picture as an addict. She wasn't living on the streets. She wasn't stealing to survive. She started using painkillers after a sports injury. Nothing unusual, her doctor prescribed them. When the prescription ran out, she switched to heroin, cheaper, easier to find. She told her friends she was being careful. She bought test strips. She never used alone. She had naloxone. But on a Friday night in March, something went wrong. The heroin she bought was laced with fentanyl, so much fentanyl that even multiple doses of naloxone couldn't save her. Her roommate found her the next morning. Sarah is one of approximately 2.7 million Americans with opioid use disorder, and that number is likely an undercount. For every person who dies, there are dozens more suffering, cycling through addiction, treatment, relapse. Here's what makes this different from all previous drug epidemics. With heroin, with crack cocaine, there was some element of knowledge. Users knew what they were taking. The risk was calculated, however poorly. With fentanyl, there is no calculation. Users don't know the dose. They don't know if it's pure fentanyl or fentanyl mixed with other drugs. They don't know if this batch is 10 times as potent as the last batch or 100 times. One use can kill, and there's nothing the user can do to predict it. By 2024, the tide finally seems to be turning slightly. Overdose deaths dropped for the first time in years, but it's fragile. New variants of fentanyl, even more potent, are emerging. New synthetic opioids are being created. The war isn't won, it's just entering a new phase. And this whole cascade, from Opium Wars to Bayer to CIA to OxyContin to fentanyl, happened because of one simple principle: profit over people. Empires made money on opium. Bayer made money on heroin. The CIA protected traffickers to fund wars. Purdue Pharma made money on OxyContin. Chinese labs make money on fentanyl precursors. Drug traffickers make money mixing fentanyl into everything. At every stage, money trumped human life, and the most tragic part, it didn't have to be this way. At any point in the last 200 years, society could have chosen differently, could have regulated, could have prosecuted, could have put people first, but they didn't. And now, we're left with 105,000 deaths per year. We're left with a generation of young Americans being erased by a drug that takes 2 milligrams to kill. We're left with a nation on its knees. The addiction treatment industry is worth $31.2 billion globally. By 2032, it's projected to reach $50 billion. Let that sink in. While millions suffer from addiction, a multi-billion-dollar industry is booming. And here's the darkest part. The industry's growth is directly proportional to the addiction crisis. The more people addicted, the more money flows. This is called the addiction economy, and it's the most perverse business model imaginable. Let's start with medication-assisted treatment. MATE, methadone, buprenorphine, naltrexone are legitimate medicines. They work. They save lives. When combined with counseling, they have success rates of 60–80% compared to 5% without medication. The problem? They're phenomenally profitable. A methadone clinic patient costs approximately $20,000 per year in treatment costs. But the actual cost of providing methadone counseling and facilities, roughly $8,000 per year. That's a 60% profit margin. And here's the business model. The longer people stay on medication, the more money the clinic makes. Now, maintenance methadone is legitimate. Some people need it for years or decades. But perverse incentives create perverse outcomes. Clinics profit from keeping people dependent. They profit from not graduating patients to independence. One former patient described a clinic that charged $20 per day for methadone, $7,300 per year, but consistently failed to provide adequate counseling or help patients taper off. When patients asked about reducing their dose, they were told they weren't ready. The clinic kept them dependent because dependent patients gyres recurring revenue. Then there are the luxury rehab centers. In the mid-2000s, as the addiction crisis deepened, a new market emerged: high-end residential treatment. Facilities charging $20,000 to $30,000 per month, targeting wealthy patients with insurance. These centers marketed themselves on luxury: gourmet meals, yoga classes, ocean views, celebrity endorsements. They weren't hospitals. They were spas that happened to treat addiction, and private equity firms noticed. They started buying up independent treatment centers, consolidating them, and cutting costs to maximize profits. One center, Nashville Recovery Center, was purchased by a private equity firm called BRC Holding. Before the takeover, roughly 80% of services were free. Anyone could drop by for support. After, the new owners created a high-end sober living program costing thousands per month. They cut counseling staff and hired cheaper labor, people in recovery with minimal credentials. Result: quality plummeted, profits soared. One incident: a resident drank half a bottle of mouthwash, attempting to get intoxicated. Staff called 911 admitting there was no nurse on site, a violation of safety standards. This is called cutting corners for profit. Another incident: a staff member had sex with a resident in a storage area, then was fired. The facility hired inadequately trained staff because it was cheaper, and the cost was paid by vulnerable patients and taxpayers via insurance fraud. Let me tell you about Nancy Milam. Nancy was 48, struggling with alcohol addiction. She emptied her 401k retirement fund, money she'd saved for 25-plus years, to attend the sober living program at Nashville Recovery Center. She paid thousands of dollars per month. After 6 months of sobriety, the facility hired her as a house manager at minimum wage. She was now supervising residents she'd lived alongside, handling their medications. She was one relapse away from destroying her recovery and others' safety. The facility did this because house managers were cheaper than actual nurses, and Nancy was vulnerable. She needed income, she was grateful for helping others, and she didn't understand she was being exploited. When she left, after the company failed to help her get certified as promised, she was financially devastated. She'd spent her retirement, she'd worked for near minimum wage, and the facility made money off her vulnerability. This is the addiction economy in action. Insurance companies profit by denying treatment or limiting coverage. Pharmaceutical companies profit by making more addictive drugs, then profiting again from treatment medications. Rehab centers profit by cycling patients through programs, keeping them dependent rather than independent. Private equity firms profit by consolidating treatment centers and cutting costs. And the government. Federal and state budgets are drained treating the consequences of addiction, emergency room visits, incarceration, social services. Everyone profits except the person struggling with addiction. Here's the most cynical part. The addiction treatment industry marketing specifically targets insurance companies and wealthy patients. Luxury rehab centers advertise on Instagram and TikTok, showing paradise-like facilities. But if you're poor, if you can't afford $20,000 per month, you get a 30-day county program in a basement, run by overworked counselors with no credentials. You get a waiting list. You get told all beds are full. The best treatment is reserved for the rich. Everyone else gets the crumbs. And here's the kicker. Treatment can cause re-traumatization and worsen outcomes if it's poorly done. Vulnerable people, already traumatized by addiction, poverty, and loss, are further damaged by predatory programs designed to maximize profit, not recovery. Some people are sent to facilities where inadequately trained staff exploit them, mismanage medications, or fail to provide basic safety. They leave more broken than they arrived. So what's the solution? What system would actually work? Simple. Remove the profit motive from addiction treatment. In countries with universal health care, Canada, the UK, Scandinavia, methadone clinics aren't trying to maximize profit. They're trying to help people get healthy and return to society. Success is measured by graduation rates, not by how long patients stay dependent. In these systems, treatment is free or low cost. It's comprehensive. It includes housing, employment support, family counseling, medication, everything. And the results? Higher recovery rates, lower overdose rates, lower crime, lower emergency room costs. It's cheaper, more effective, and more humane. But in America, we have a different system. We have capitalism applied to human suffering. We have corporations that profit from addiction and profit again from treatment. So we return to the original question, who profits from your pain? The British Empire profited from Opium Wars. Bayer profited from heroin. The CIA profited from strategic advantage while Americans died of heroin. Purdue Pharma profited from OxyContin. Chinese labs profit from fentanyl precursors. And now, rehab centers and pharmaceutical companies profit from the consequences. It's the same blueprint, repeated for 200 years. Create addiction, profit from it, profit from treatment, repeat. And the cost? 105,000 Americans dead per year, millions addicted, families destroyed, communities hollowed out, generations lost. But here's what's important to understand. This isn't inevitable. This isn't natural. This is a choice. Every person profiting from addiction is making a choice to do so. Every corporation, every government, every individual complicit is choosing profit over people. And every person can also make a different choice.